it's not just about the transaction. It's really about taking care of
the people. Welcome, everybody. This is the Real Estate for Real People, or Real People for Real Estate. Real Estate for Real People.
Yeah, you were
podcast.
Right. You were right the first time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm Brad. This is my lovely wife and business expert partner.
I always wonder what he's going to say when he introduces me. But yes, I'm Marianne.
Right. Yeah, I would never go with like she's my possession or she's my chattel, or that would end up in the doghouse.
That would be bad.
Yeah, on super extreme levels.
On so many levels. Yes.
So we won't ever go there. Right?
What's that? Yes.
We won't ever go there. Okay. So today we're going to do something a little different. Today we're going to be talking about, as they say in Hawaii, we're going to talk story, and we're going to share some of our experiences from some of our more intense clients that we've had to deal with, and some of the things we've learned from dealing with the intense ones, or the high need ones, or the brand new ones, or the seasoned citizen ones, because they all come with a different kind of set of baggage, and we have made the mistake of ignoring some of those red flags that we saw, and it kind of bit us. Mm-hmm. So we're just going to kind of tell you some fun stories, and we've changed the names to protect the innocent and not so innocent. But it's better to do that than have somebody see this podcast and file a lawsuit. So
yeah, our names will remain the same.
Yes, yeah,
we're not innocent.
Right.
Yeah. And they all have their. I would say they all have their unique characteristics and challenges.
Yep.
So the first person or transaction that we're going to talk about happened to be a listing that we received from an appraisal referral. And the appraiser called us and said, this gentleman is seeking to sell his house. Would you be interested in working with him?
Because she had just done his appraisal.
She had just done his appraisal.
At his request.
At his request. So, of course, business is business, right? And
she's a past client.
She is a past client.
So we thanked her for the referral and went out to meet him. Yes.
And so we're going to name this client Joe. So what happened when we went out to visit Joe?
Well, the first thing we said was, man, congratulations on getting a $435,000 appraised value. And he goes, that's great. I want to list it for $480,000. Even though a week prior he'd had the appraisal at $435,000. So right out of the gate, we knew there was a bit of a problem. And then...
but we thought we could manage it.
Yeah, we'll manage it, because really the market will tell us whether he's right or wrong. And we knew that he was $485,000 was absolutely not right, but he wanted to try there. And then the other thing that I think, as he shows us through the home,
it's beautiful property, by the way.
It's beautiful property.
It's out Rose Valley area, and it's just gorgeous.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It is well maintained. It has extra things on the property, outbuildings.
Oh yeah, greenhouses, shops, all the good stuff.
The whole kit and caboodle.
Yeah, nobody would not want to move into this property if you want a little piece of heaven out in the woods. So we are walking through, and he's showing us all these really cool things in the house, and then he says, and to keep this PG, I'm just going to tell you, cover your ears, kids, if you're watching. He says, really, when it comes to business, I'm a complete asshole. And we were like, you're funny. We thought he was kidding. What we didn't know is that was the first red flag that we ignored that we shouldn't have. Because we get into the transaction, and he was absolutely not kidding at all.
He was a challenge.
Yes.
He and his wife were selling the property. She didn't really interact much with us.
She was busy working.
She was busy working. This was kind of his deal. And so besides that first red flag, I think one of the biggest lessons we learned was when you're working with clients, the best clients to work with are the people in your sphere, the people that you know and love, and that have the same set of values as you do. Those are going to be the transactions that are really the most successful usually.
And and I'll piggyback on that. So just because they come from your sphere of influence doesn't mean they're going to be a good referral.
No.
Right? And every once in a while, like when we found Joe, right, or when we went to meet Joe and we closed on Joe's property, Joe did not stay in the database of past clients, right? So
That's true.
you have the ability to kick Joe to the curb and not keep him in your database, knowing he personally is combative. So just because you have a client doesn't mean that you can't fire them in mid-transaction, like when you're showing them homes, or you can just not include them in your past client database as well. So you don't have to keep people who are abusive to you for any reason. I don't care whether it's you get a misogynistic guy, you got a guy who's an a-hole, you get somebody who's a bigot or a racist. I don't care what. There's no commission worth selling your soul to earn. So that is probably the first piece of advice that we share with all of our agents is feel free to fire people who are mean, because mean people suck. And it's just better that way.
Yeah. And for me, so I was the lead on this transaction, and I received the distinct impression that females do not have as much value as males in this world. I'll just say it that way. And I didn't have a whole lot of credibility with this individual. And so he wanted me to do some things that were outside the contract. He wanted to he wanted to not sell to these buyers. He wanted to terminate all sorts of things. And one of the other lessons that we learned on this is the value and the power of knowing your forms.
Your state real estate forms.
Your real estate forms, your real estate contracts, and always taking clients back to the contract. If they are wanting you to do something or wanting out of the contract for some reason, take them back to the contract and show them what it is that they agreed to do from the beginning. And those are signed around by all parties, and one party cannot just unilaterally decide they don't want to sell a property, especially if they're on the listing side.
Right. No, that's in the state of Washington. Other states may have a different rule or law, but buyer or seller, nobody can unilaterally kill a deal here. So everybody's got to kind of play nice in the sandbox. And that's exactly what this guy did. He interpreted the paperwork that he had in his possession, and he interpreted it one way, which was not really legally how it worked. And so he thought he had this thing locked up solid, and it didn't quite work out that way. And his response, I believe, to you was, you were talking to him one day about, we just need to keep this focused on the contract. And this is what you signed. This is what you'd agreed to. And his comment was, well played, Marianne, well played. Like you'd found some workaround or something.
Like
right?
It was a game.
Yeah, like it's a game. Anyway, so.
That was the first time that I ever considered walking away from a very healthy commission.
Okay.
And had you not been willing to kind of step in and take it on, we would not have. I don't know what we would have done, but I was done, and it takes a lot for me to be done.
Yeah. Well, and
on
again,
a situation.
This comes back to no commission is worth your soul.
True.
So, future realtors, or if you're watching this and you're a realtor, feel free to fire clients who are not up your alley, right? Talk to a mentor, talk to your managing broker, your principal broker, whoever it is that's above you in your office, and let them know the problems you're having. They may be able to help you and step in and work with you to resolve that issue. Or they may just say, hey, it sounds like this person needs to get canned, and let them go. It's more challenging to do that, obviously, mid-transaction.
Yeah.
You don't want to go there, but that's where your managing broker should step in, because the firm is entitled to a certain amount of commission as well from that sale, and they may not want to lose that. So maybe they'll step in and make sure that the firm gets paid.
Right. Well, and technically in the state of Washington, the firm owns the listing.
Correct.
And we, as agents or brokers, are assigned to represent the firm in that transaction.
So you kill a listing inadvertently, and you're taking money out of the firm's pocket, which could be problematic for you as as an agent. So so we learned all kinds of great little tidbits on that one.
Yes, we did.
How to deal with people, how not to deal with people, and
The people to take on, the people not to take on.
well, yeah, and I think the biggest
Pay
thing for
attention.
me was, just because it comes from a trusted referral source or a trusted sphere of influence person, it doesn't mean that the person they're giving you is somebody you would normally want to work with.
Right.
So you got to be aware, right? So let's move on to Bertha.
Okay.
Bertha is a seasoned citizen, and she is in a property that is way over her head as far as scope. It's acreage, it's barns, it's shops, it's a big house, 2-story house, and it's just got away on her. And no fault of anybody's, but she's a seasoned citizen and she doesn't really have the ability to blow and pressure wash and sweep needles off a 2-story roof on a shop in a barn. Anyways, so you have to be prepared for that client. You need to give them an extra measure of grace, and you really need to be patient with them because, man, they'll say and do some things that seem a little counterintuitive to getting their home sold. Sure. But the thing you need to remember is be empathetic, put yourself in their shoes, realizing that they are right now, this age group is one generation away from the Great Depression, if they didn't go through the Great Depression as a child. And so that's going to set their brain pattern a completely different way than somebody who's a Gen Xer who never went through any type of a Great Depression, right? So mindset shift differs greatly when you're dealing with generations, especially generations that you're not used to working with. So
one of the other pieces to remember about some seasoned citizens is that, so in our family lives close to one another, so we have a lot of support when we are doing anything, whether it's a family gathering or moving or project at mom and dad's house or whatever it is. Everybody can come together, and we've got a variety of ages that can assist. Sometimes seasoned citizens don't live near their kids or their family, and so in those cases, as agents, if you want to take on a listing like that, make sure that you are prepared to get your hands dirty, that you're prepared to go in and do some manual labor, clean out the barns, take 2, what are those called? Dump trailers to the dump. 2, and we're not done. So, it's a lot. It's a big commitment. So sometimes in those cases, it's not just about the transaction. It's really about taking care of the people and making sure that they have the opportunity to sell their home and move to be closer to family, which in this case is the reason for the sale. So
every once in a while, you'll get family who will come into town and help. But you can't expect that to happen. That's kind of a gift if you get it. But if not, seasoned citizens can't take this kind of a property. Oh. And sometimes they can't even take a small, I think of some of the other folks that we've worked with who are, disabled, or they
have health issues.
Yeah, they got health issues, and they can't walk very well, or they can't lift stuff very much. And so those are people that you just need to love on a little extra, not extra more, extra. Because they deserve to have the exact same experience as a $1 million client does, right? You're going to help people where they help them. The $1 million people, they may be able to afford movers and all that kind of stuff. And so that may not be the thing that we're called to help with, but
there are going to be other challenges with people that are selling luxury homes. So maybe on a future podcast.
Yeah, exactly. So the other thing when you're dealing with seasoned citizens, you got to be ready for clutter, gang. Because especially if they came through the Great Depression, they have saved everything. They have all of their old tinfoil folded up. They have got every newspaper, every hanky, every piece of memorabilia from their parents or their grandparents or great-grandparents, and they have got it stuffed away in every nook and cranny of the house. So just be prepared And try and keep the shock and awe off your jaw, because it's coming, I promise. I mean, you'll walk into a room and you'll look, it's floor to ceiling stacked with stuff. We walked into one gal's house and she was an avid gambler. And we walked into that room and it was nothing but prizes that she had won from the casino. And the biggest challenge was she had blown hundreds and thousands of dollars of her savings to win this room full of pots and pans and vacuums. And it was
You have to train your face.
it was dreadful to see.
It was dreadful, but you have to train your face not to make judgment or,
Yeah.
be shocked or.
Because it's pretty easy to throw some judgment around. They
Yeah,
tell you
but
they've
that's not-
spent hundreds of thousands of
Yeah.
dollars at the casino, and you walk in and here's the room.
Yeah. Don't.
Yeah. I mean, I could have gone down to Bed Bath and Beyond and spent about $2,500 to get that whole room full of stuff, right? But yeah, I guess it was hours of entertainment. So anyway, right, you got to kind of steel your face for some of these things, and you got to be very careful about your opinions creeping into their opinions or what they think and feel.
Their choices.
Yeah. So you can't necessarily be all judgy about, why did you keep that? Probably not something that you want to, oh, sorry, my husband's ashes are in here. Okay, so now you're open mouth, insert foot. Yeah. And I was in a listing the other day and someone said, can we get your husband's ashes off the mantle? And she was like, I have to remove those? Yep, probably.
That would be a good idea.
Yeah. Last thing we need is somebody running their hand along the top of the mantle and they knock that thing off onto the floor. Yeah. And they're trying to be helpful and they don't know and they just vacuum it up. Just no end to the possibilities of that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're done talking about Bertha.
Let's talk about Maya.
Ooh, Maya. Maya's a first-time home buyer.
She is a first-time home buyer.
And do they come with their own set of challenges?
They do. They are green as grass. And I personally love that because I'm a teacher at heart. And so there's a lot of teaching that goes along with first-time home buyers. They don't know what they don't know.
They don't even know what questions to ask to find out what they don't know. Yeah.
And in this case, it was my client was somebody that have known for quite some time, quite a long time, and care about a lot. So we looked for a long time for just the right house, and that was in her price range, and we found one. And there was no end to the excitement. And what is the biggest lesson we learned on this? It actually had nothing to do, it didn't have much to do with being a first-time home buyer. It really had to do with the realization that most of the time I work on the other side of the transaction with people who have a similar why to us, and that is that all of us are trying to get this transaction to the closing table where everybody feels like it's a win-win.
And that didn't happen on this one?
And that did not happen on this one.
What happened?
We had something called a low appraisal.
That was.
We had some other things that happened before that. There were some repairs that needed to be done that were called out by the appraiser. And so, again, part of how we choose to do business is getting in and getting our hands dirty when we need to. So if that means going up and putting some paint on exposed wood, we'll go and do that. Go and dig ditches around the house to make sure that the dirt's not touching the wood. Thank you, baby. So there was a lot of physical labor that we did on this house. But then we got to the low appraisal. And when you get a low appraisal, that just means that the value of the house comes in lower than the price that the buyer is willing to pay and that everybody's agreed to. So in this case, the seller did not want to play nicely in the sandbox and decided that they didn't care that this was a first-time home buyer, and they didn't care that they were going to have to bring another $5,300 in cash to close. This seller basically said, if you want that house, you're going to find the money and make it happen. So that caused a whole lot of hurt and heartache for our buyer. Fortunately, she was able to figure out a way to deal with that situation, and it was happy ending, and we closed. And she is thrilled with her little cabin near the coast, her little bungalow. And so all is well with the world, but man, in the middle of that was some tough stuff. And one of the things I learned about in this transaction was to not assume that everybody is working towards the same end. Not everybody plays well in the sandbox. And so I really didn't anticipate that seller would say, tough luck. Because,
that's so not the norm.
That's so not the norm.
Right. You would expect that in commercial because it's just about the business.
Sure.
There's some emotion tied to some of these things for most sellers. I think my biggest shock was the listing agent.
Oh, tell me about that. Yeah.
Well, it's, again, you're thinking that everybody's trying to, push this thing to close, but at some point, if you do real estate long enough, you will you'll run up against an agent on the other side of the transaction, and the tail is wagging the dog. So the owner, seller, or buyer are completely manhandling their agent. And the agent doesn't have the spine or whatever to stand up and plant their feet and say, that's not how this works. They just make us the bad guys saying, that's not how this works. And it became a problem at a number of different points because it became almost adversarial. And you don't ever want a transaction of any dollar amount size. I don't care whether it's 150 or $1.5 million. You don't ever want these transactions to become adversarial because then almost everybody loses at some point in that transaction. And that was bad.
Managing expectations of your clients.
That
becomes really, it's important if you want to be considered successful long term.
Yeah, and this was the first time that we'd ever had, we'd put in our request for a new roof. You'd gone to this time and trouble of, getting a roofing bid from 2 hours away, and then we submit that roofing bid. It was like what, $6,000, $6,500,
$8,000.
$8,000. No, your bid was $8,000. And what was their bid?
Almost 10.
Okay, so the seller then, she says, well, I only want to use my contractor, and his bid says $10,000, so we're going to go with that, and you're going to pay half of that. Well, hang on, we had a bid for $2,000 less. Why? She says, no, I only want my contractor working on this house. Mind you, this was a rental. She didn't even live in this house.
But I think that played into part of the lack of emotional
right, because it was
awareness.
just a thing.
It was just a thing to her. So she was all about the money. She wasn't interested or didn't really care about how it was going to impact anybody else in the transaction.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So you run into some challenges like that, right? You don't really expect the agent on the other side representing the seller or the seller to go completely off the rails. But this one did it, that one.
Almost.
Yeah.
We got it done though.
Yes, you did.
We got it done.
You worked really hard to get that thing closed. And that was a win, right? Everybody won. So now the buyer got to move in, the seller got their money, both agents got paid, both firms got paid, but it was a little touch and go there for a little while, right?
It was a little emotional, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. So the last one we're going to talk about, this is charity. And so, gang, if you ever have somebody who's flipping a house and there is any amount of substantial foundation work that needs to go on, and they're going to choose to pay for that in their flip, you need to make sure that at the end of the transaction that the warranty paperwork gets transferred from the seller to the buyer. Most of these places that do foundation repair Some of the big names out here, Terra Firma, Ramjack, Foundations First, they've all got some kind of a warranty that is very transferable. And it's like $30 or $50 or $100 to transfer the warranty. And I mean, you're talking, I think our gal, Charity, she was $70,000 in foundation repair on this house. And it was extensive. I mean, the house had not only sunk, it was sliding. And so we had geotech reports and all this stuff was done. They had anchors in that shot from the back of the house way out underneath the driveway horizontally to stop the house from moving. They jacked the house up. I mean, I'm standing in the house as they're racking these jacks up, and I'm watching cracks on sheetrock close. I'm like, wow. I mean, that was extensive for me. I mean, that was a lot. And it wasn't even a huge house, but it was on a bad spot on the land, and we knew that those problems were there. That's why we got the house at the deal we did. The problem is, we made the assumption that
It was, by the way, it was all disclosed.
Oh, yes.
There was disclosure up the wazoo. So
Top to bottom.
the buyer that came in knew all the work that had been done. They knew about the geotech reports. They
They
had
had a home
access
inspector
to.
come in.
Yep.
Home inspector went down there because we did foundation work. We did a whole new drainage system underneath there. I mean, it was a lot of money. And so this is the thing that kind of gets my hackles up when it comes to working with lawyers. This couple that bought the home, they either didn't remember to, their agent didn't relay. Somehow that warranty never got transferred over to them. We left it laying on the counter, and I told her agent, make sure that they transfer this warranty. Did I get that in writing?
No.
I don't think I did. So, my bad there, probably. Because then it would have been cut and dry, right? His fault, he pays. So instead, what happened was these folks, the house starts doing something. We never did find out what it was doing, but they decided that they were going to move out, and they blamed that the house was falling apart. Well, the contractor who did this work, their warranty would have covered anything that needed to be redone.
Yep.
But because they didn't transfer the warranty, and they didn't reach out to that company and say, hey, we forgot to transfer this, but the house is showing signs that it's stressed again, would you come in and fix this? Instead of reaching out to them, they just said, well, we didn't transfer the warranty, so it must not, they won't fix it. Well, when push came to shove and we went back to that company, they said, well, of course we'll come and fix that, right? We don't want our work being done wrong. And mind you, this all passed every geotech review, the building inspector, I mean, everything passed code, right? This was all done top to bottom correctly. The biggest issue for me is that these sellers went to a local attorney, and that attorney filed suit against this seller for non-disclosure. He said, you said that the house was tipping or that it had sunk. You didn't say it was sliding. No, the geotech report showed it was sliding. It had horizontal movement. It had vertical, it had all kinds of stuff, right? And so there was no way that these folks did not know that. But they're saying on our seller's disclosure that it wasn't disclosed properly, which it was. Because we sent so we got subpoenaed, right? Our documents got subpoenaed.
All of our documents.
And so, within 15, 20 minutes, Marianne and I'm all sitting on a thumb drive. We delivered them right to the attorney and
didn't hear from them again.
And never heard from that attorney again. So her paperwork was flawless, right? Exactly where we would want it for every one of our agents. Flawless paperwork. And so then it went, basically the attorney said, well, we can't go to the realtors and get anything. So let's go to the seller and get something. And so now this couple is going after the seller. And when that attorney, and so she's got two attorneys in her hometown defending her, costing her thousands of dollars every time they answer the phone. And so the next thing is this attorney says, look, we're never going to win this thing. I'm going to send you down the hall to this new attorney. They need practice. Let's go to them and let's let them redo and see if they can get somewhere with this. And so this went from attorney to attorney to attorney to attorney, some in the same firm and then some in other firms. And they were basically bleeding this poor seller dry. Every ounce of money she had made on this house, gone.
And then some.
Every amount of money she had to invest in it was all gone. So, I mean, it was
sad.
a travesty to see what they did to her. And this was all kind of a product of what seemed to be the legal system. Mm-hmm. And they were just hoping to get her to a point where she was in such dire straits that she'd settle. Mm-hmm. And it was just one after the other.
Yeah. Well, originally, as I recall, that they wanted her to buy the house back.
Oh, they did. Yeah, like there's some kind of lemon law.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's...
So that was kind of where it started.
Right.
And then it went downhill from there.
Right. Yeah. Because, so there's statute of limitations and there's discovery and there's all these things that have to happen. And anyway, so, I mean, it happened really relatively shortly after the home was closed on. I mean, 6 months, maybe. Mm-hmm. So it was interesting to see, but for me, it was a huge wake-up call as to how that law firm decided to deal with that. And it just, I mean, A didn't get it done, so they sent it to B. B didn't get it done, they sent it to C. And then here comes D, E, and F. And they're all doing the exact same discovery. And so her attorneys are having to
redo things all the
redo
time.
everything for every new lawyer. And it was brutal.
Yeah.
So just be aware, gang, if you are...
Do we know how that ended?
Yes, the couple eventually couldn't find anyone else to take their case, and so it just stopped. The problem is, all of her money is gone because
It's 4 years.
they lawyered her to death.
It was 4 years,
basically, which was disastrous, right, for her and her husband financially. It took away several $100,000 of savings and nest egg that they had set aside. So, yeah, that's not a really great ending to that story. But the moral to that story is when you're dealing with the law and lawyers, even if you're not in the wrong as an agent, any good attorney is going to name the buyer, the seller, both agents and both firms. So there's going to be 6 people in on this lawsuit now. 2 businesses, 2 agents, and the buyers and the sellers and their attorneys. So, even if you're in the absolute right and you have done nothing wrong, you can still get pulled into a lawsuit. You don't have to be the person who's made the mistake to end up in the lawsuit. And if you have to protect yourself, that will be agents are all required. Their offices are required to have errors and omissions insurance. We call E&O insurance. And sometimes it's as much as a $5,000 deductible. So that's got to come out of your pocket, and then you get another $20,000 to $25,000 in legal assistance, right? But nobody wants to have to tap that. I mean, that's horrible money just thrown down the drain.
Yeah.
So
I think it's important that that as agents and brokers that we keep in mind that it's not if, but when we will be called into the legal system. If that's our mindset, then we are always prepared. We're always doing our job in a way that will hold us in good stead as much as possible when that situation arises. If you find yourself in a situation like that, make sure as an agent that you go to your designated or principal broker quickly. They will help you navigate that. And this is not something you should ever have to do by yourself because it's overwhelming.
Don't.
It's overwhelming.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, we were the owners of the firm, so we didn't have, we were the people that we were telling you to go to.
We were the agent and we were the firm.
Yeah.
In this case.
Yeah. So, you're spot on. Go get assistance because your bosses all know that some kind of legal battle is coming for everybody that works for their firm. Like you said, it's not if, but when. So they all know it's coming. And what I like to do is I like to, basically take the agents out of it and insert myself in their position because I don't want them having to get their heads wrapped around that too much, right? I want to kind of run interference for them so they can just stay focused on what they're doing and let me take care of the bad stuff.
Well, the fact of the matter is that the laws probably better than they do anyway.
Yeah.
And you have been down that road more times than they have to know what questions to ask, what answers to give, and how to circumnavigate that. So Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, but don't ever hesitate as an agent. Don't ever hesitate to get in your boss's office and say, I need help. I have a problem. Yeah, so that's that. So all in all, is real estate a fun business to be in?
Absolutely. I learned something new on every single transaction. Having done this business for over 6 years now, I can honestly say that there is not a single transaction that I haven't learned something on. And it just makes me a better agent. Every time I go into a new situation, I have those experiences to draw on. And at the end of the day, it's all about taking care of people. And what's not to love about that?
Correct. So can you learn real estate by reading a book?
You can learn things about real estate from a book. You can't learn how to take care of people and do the process of real estate in a book.
Right.
It's because, like we've been talking about, there's a new situation every time you walk out the door, every time you answer the phone, every time you make an appointment. It's all new every time.
Yep.
Every client is different. Every property is different. Every transaction is different. It's awesome. It's a great business to be in.
Lots of fun stuff, and like you said, it's always new. But with that newness comes some struggles and some wins and some losses. But even if it's a loss, we look at it as a lesson, not really a loss, right? Because you're either winning and you're getting that thing closed, or you're learning a lesson to make sure that never happens down the road.
Yeah.
And you can then share that with other people to make sure that they are not going to fall into that same boogie or trap that you did.
Yeah.
Because we always learn better when it pinches a little. Right? I mean, most people don't learn from someone else's success. Most people learn from their own mistake.
Right.
Because it's far more painful.
Right. So it's not failure, it's learning.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the best mindset to have, I think.
100%. Please keep that mindset. It's not failure, it's learning, right?
Nobody does things perfectly every time, and that's just the way of the world.
Yeah, it's true. All right. So thank you for taking some time and spending it with us today. If you have any questions, feel free to hit the subscribe button and send us a request, or if you have questions or you want to hear us talk about a topic, we would love to do that. And other than that, we'll sign off and we'll see you later.
Comment, like, and share. See you next time.
See ya.